Whenever rare Beatles memorabilia surfaces at auction, it draws enormous interest and astronomical prices. Earlier this year, John Lennon's Hootenanny, 12-string guitar used in the movie Help, was rediscovered in an attic and fetched an impressive $2.85 million. Now, another iconic piece of Beatles history is set to go on sale, offering a glimpse into the final chapter of the band's legendary career. The item is the fully restored EMI TG12345 recording console, the very equipment that the Beatles used to create Abbey Road. Built in 1968 by EMI, the console was the first of only 17 such units made worldwide. While other artists of this era also used this model, it was this specific console at Abbey Road Studios that witnessed the making of the Beatles' Swan Song album and later featured in early solo works of George Harrison, John Lennon, and Paul McCartney. After decades of dormancy, recording engineer Brian Gibson painstakingly restored the console over 5 years, primarily using its original parts to return it to working condition. Engineers even use it to record modern artists, demonstrating how the console, despite its vintage build, still holds its own against today's high-tech equipment. Engineer Dave Heeres, who worked with the Beatles, shared this with the Robb Report. "This particular console is a one-off. It's unique. You can't replace it. It holds up against any modern console, and in many respects, it's probably better. In those days, it was built to the highest standards. Cost was no object. EMI built this to be the best in the world." The console will be listed on Reverb starting October 29th. We will leave a link in our description. And given its status as a working piece of music history, it's expected to attract significant bids from both collectors and studio professionals alike. As we marvel at the tools behind Abbey Road, it is fitting to revisit the words of George Harrison, who discussed each track on the album shortly before its release. On September 26, 1969, the Detroit Free Press published a rare interview with Harrison offering insights to the songs that would become etched in rock history. What's interesting is that this article predicted Abbey Road would become one of the most famous streets in the world, and it was spot on. The album today is an enduring cultural icon with millions of fans visiting the crossing outside Abbey Road Studios. Actually, a live stream runs from Abbey Road 24/7. Capturing tourists attempting to recreate the album cover by posing in the middle of the street, sometimes in very dangerous close calls with oncoming traffic. The sight of fans from around the world braving the traffic just for a chance to step into Beatles history pretty much underscores how deep Abbey Road continues to resonate. So this is before anyone's heard the album. Let's see what George Harrison thought at the time. September 26, 1969. George Harrison talks about the Beatles album Abbey Road by Richie York, London. Abbey Road is a short street in North London with only one distinctive feature. It houses the studios of EMI, the world's largest record company. In the next few weeks, however, it seems assured that Abbey Road will become as well known internationally as Portobello Road, Petticoat Lane, and Carnaby Street. I can see it now, see-through, mini-skirted Londoners catching the tube to Abbey Road, tourist bus excursions rerouting from Regent's Park to drive by the studios. If I had both the time and the money, I'd be feverishly looking for property on Abbey Road to open a boutique. The reason for all this projected activity on Abbey Road is that the new Beatles album, the group's 19th, has been named after it, because all of the Beatles hits were recorded in the Abbey Road studios. The tolls of the Beatles in this very ordinary North London thoroughfare have accounted for the sale of 290 million records. Abbey Road will be released in North America on Monday, October 6. Originally, the Beatles had planned to release another earlier recorded album, Get Back, Don't Let Me Down, and 12 Others, as their next album. In London last week, at the group's Apple headquarters in fashionable Savile Row, George Harrison, who is widely reputed to be the sanest and least weird member of the Beatles, discussed both the reasons for Abbey Road, Get Back, and he also reviewed the new album track by track. "Well, we had Get Back in the can, but one day we just decided we'd like to do a newer album. There was no particular reason, we just wanted to use some of our newest songs. The trouble with making albums is that it is difficult to represent the group as it is at present. I mean, like right now. Abbey Road was only finished 2 weeks ago, so it does fairly represent the Beatles as we are at this point in time. Come Together, the first track on side 1, was one of the last tracks to be recorded. John wrote it a month ago, just after his car accident. It's a 12-bar tight tune and one of the nicest things we've done musically. Ringo's drumming is great. Ringo sitting across the room grinned. It's an upbeat rockabeat boogie with very Lennon lyrics. Something is a song of mine. I wrote it just as we were finishing the last album, the white one, but it was never finished. I can never think of the right words for it. Joe Cocker has done a version too, and there's talk of it being the next Beatles single. When I recorded it, I imagined somebody like Ray Charles doing it. That was the feel I thought I should have, but because I'm not Ray Charles, I'm much more limited what I can do. We just did what we could. It's nice though, probably the nicest melody I've ever written. Maxwell's Silverhammer is just something of Paul's. We spent a hell of a lot of time recording this one. It's one of those instant whistle-along tunes which some people will hate and others will love. It's like Honey Pie, a fun sort of song, but probably sick as well because the guy keeps killing everybody. We used my Moog synthesizer on this track, and I think it came out effectively. Oh Darling is another of Paul's songs which is typical 1950 to 1960 sort of period in its chord structure. It's a typical 1955 song which thousands of groups used to make. The Moon Glows, the Paragons, the Shells, and so on. We do a few oh-ohs in the background, very quietly, but mainly it's Paul shouting. Octopus's Garden is Ringo's song the second it's written. It's lovely. Ringo gets very bored playing the drums, so at home he plays the piano, but knows about 3 chords. And he mainly knows about the same on the guitar. He mainly likes country music, so this has a country and western feel. It's really a great song. On the surface, it's a daft kids song, but I find the lyrics very meaningful. I find very deep meaning in the lyrics, which Ringo probably doesn't even know about. Lines like resting our head on the seabed and we'll be warm beneath the storm makes me realize that when you get deep into your consciousness, it's very peaceful. So Ringo writes his cosmic songs without knowing it. From across the room, Ringo grinned again. I Want You, She's So Heavy. It's very heavy. It has John playing lead guitar and singing the same as he plays. This is good because the riff he sings is basically a blues, but it's a very original Lennon-like song, even though you thought I'd written it. The middle bit is great. John has an amazing thing with his timing. He always comes across with different timing things. For example, All You Need Is Love, which sort of skips beats and changes from 3/4 to 4/4 all the time, in and out of each other. Yet when you question him about it, he doesn't know. He just does it naturally, and you can't pin him down. It's an excellent chord sequence he's using. Here Comes the Sun, the first cut on side 2, is the other song I wrote for the album. It was written on a very nice sunny day in Eric Clapton's garden. We'd been through real hell with business and it was all very heavy. Being in Eric's garden felt like playing hooky from school. I found some sort of release and the song just came. It's a little bit like If I Needed Someone, with that basic riff running through it. But it is very simple, really. Because it's one of the most beautiful things we've ever done. It has a 3-part harmony, John, Paul, and George. John wrote the song, and the backing is a bit like Beethoven. It does resemble Paul's writing style, but only because of the sweetness. Paul usually writes the sweet things, and John does the brave-ups and freakier things. But every now and then, John just wants to write a simple 12-bar thing. I think this is my favorite track on the album. It's so simple, especially the lyrics. The harmony was very difficult to do. We had to really learn it. I think this is the tune that will impress most people. Hit people will dig it, and the stray people and serious music critics will too. It's really good. Then begins the medley of Paul and John songs, all shoved together. It's hard to describe them unless you hear them at the same time. You Never Give Me Your Money is like 2 songs. The bridge of it is like a completely different song. You whip out of that into Sun King, which John wrote. He originally called it Los Paranos. Mean Mr. Mustard and Polythene Pam are 2 short songs which John wrote in India 18 months ago. She Came In Through the Bathroom Window is a very good song of Paul's, with great lyrics. Golden Slumbers is another very melodic song of Paul's. Carry That Weight keeps coming in and out of the medley all the way through. The end is just that, a little sequence which ends it all. I didn't ask George to predict how many copies of Abbey Road will sell. World advance orders are already well over the million mark. That familiar music business phrase is back in use. The Beatles have done it again, on Abbey Road no less. Interesting to note how he mentions Ringo's love for country and Western music there. All the way back in 1969, goes to prove that Ringo just isn't following current trends. The Beatles drummer has announced he will be releasing a country album early next year called Look Up, adding another dimension to his already eclectic post-Beatles career. The latest release marks a full-circle moment given his love for country music dating back to his cover of Buck Owens' Act Naturally during the Beatles era. So that's your Beatles update for today. If you haven't already, please click on subscribe, and we thank you for watching Rock Buzz.